What's up, sexy people of the internet? It's Dave. It's Duncan back from Metal Epidemic for another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Californian Melodic Death Metal band Upon Stone. The band's new album, Dead Mother Moon, will be released on January 19th via Century Media Records. The roots of Upon Stone twist back to its member.
Can't say roots without, like, whenever roots is mentioned, you know, it's ingrained in my age, your age, old as. You hear the word roots in your head, you're bloody roots, and you're like, yes, Max, sing it, you old bad. Did you see him do his metal cover of Feliz Navidad?
Have I seen that? I think I have seen that. That does ring a bell, actually.
Oh, man. I was like, all it was missing was a bullshit and a motherfucker.
Yeah.
Like, what a guy. Old bastard. Anyway, right. Anyway,
yeah.
Roots.
Yeah, it
Bloody
goes back
roots.
to their teenage years anyway. When the vocalist and bassist Xavier Wahlberg, drummer Wyatt Bentley, and guitarist Ronnie Marks began playing together in various Valley bedroom bred outfits. Joined by guitarist Gage Goss, the band became to full fruition in 2021. Don't know what happened there.
Torfil, yes.
Came Torfil. I don't know what's going on there. Where Wild Sorrows Grow, released on Creator Destructor. From there, Upon Stone began gigging relentlessly, finding their audience between Los Angeles hardcore and metal sects, sharing the stage with acts such as Bewitcher, Creeping Death, and Vomit Forth. During this time, the band began writing what would become Dead Mother Moon. Produced and mixed by Taylor Young at the Pit, twitching tongues and nails. Dead Mother Moon is a 9-song blast of viciously delivered melodic death metal. The themes of the album deal with isolation, loss, the search for meaning, and a return to strength, notated by emotions and ideas explored through a lens of mysticism and the occult. So, debut album from Upon Stone, and I mentioned this to you before, one that from a genre that we don't tend to touch on that often.
You know what I think it is?
What is it?
I'll tell you what I think it is. I think it's because melodic death metal became a bit of a whipping boy of the genre.
Oh, really?
I think there was a lot of bands that started off in that genre that started to go either a little more death metal-y or a little more melodic, and it's now probably, and arguably every band's compared to At the Gates. That's the problem is the Jaws.
Yeah.
It's the Jaws scenario. You can't make a movie about like being eaten in the water without someone saying, "Oh, it's just a Jaws ripoff." There is a point where inevitably every band in that genre are going to be compared to At the Gates, and that is a difficult thing to wield, because you either are judged as not being good as, or if you divert too much from the formula, not trying hard enough. So, and I think that you think about the biggest bands in that genre now. I mean, the biggest band probably is In Flames still, and In Flames don't even sound remotely in that genre anymore, and haven't done for the best part of 20 years. So. It's not one that we cover much, but I think it's one we refer to in terms of production. We'll say, that has a kind of late 90s Scandinavian sound, which is basically short form for melodic death metal. So,
it's weird. I was thinking about it. I was like, Slaughter of the Soul by At the Gates is one of my favourite metal albums of all time. So I was like, I'm not sure why we don't do more.
But it's also like fucking, how old is that album?
It's old. Yeah,
it's like what, 25 years old or something now?
Yeah.
Maybe even older than that.
Yeah, more than that. Yeah.
So I mean, we'll sit here. So,
but maybe we should start to do more. Who knows?
Well, if you follow the rule of thumb on the 20-year itch, I imagine we're going to be hearing a lot more of it.
Maybe. Okay, so I don't think either of us had heard of this band before now. No. But even though this was a debut, there seemed to be a bit of a buzz about them online. So what do we think? Dead Mother Moon. Duncan, what did you make of this one?
Well, the first thing I'm going to mention, because I want to mention it, is the production here is on fucking point. Like, had you
Really
told me that this wasn't like listen, I was scouring the internet, I was going through the Metal Encyclopedia online. This band, the Pawn Stone, come out of that. Apparently, they released an album in 1998, and then you had given me this album to listen to. I would have been none the wiser. I would have been like, that fucking, yeah. I mean, it was like really, really crisp. Boy, I think this is one of the more authentic. Not only is it authentic sounding, does not sound American at all. This is
no, it doesn't.
In the fucking. This is in the fjords.
Yep.
Of the motherland across the water from us. This is like Scandinavian AF. Like, this is like 6'2", blonde hair, maybe a porn moustache. Hung like a horse and only eats buried fish. I don't know how many more stereotypes I can throw out Sweden. Shots fired. So that is across the board here. And what actually stood out to me the most about listening to it is how authentic it is to the genre. Like, I mentioned a couple of bands here, and then we mentioned about the timeline of divergence from those that went more melodic or those that went more death metal-y. I think this is, like, there's no ambiguity here. This is a melodic death metal album in the vein of the bands that were around 25 years ago. I think they've got that cornered. What I liked about it, though, is, well, you mentioned the old we don't talk about it much. There is a weird nostalgia that comes in from when you hear this music, where you just kind of sink into it without much effort. Isn't, like, whilst the band are doing lots here, there's blast beats, there's shredding riffing, there's like hints and shades of the black in there, and it's visceral, and it's got this kind of retro. When I say retro, I mean retro to the 90s kind of production. It's not a challenging album to listen to. No. Like, it's a very snug album to sit down and spin on, because I feel like I'm kind of reminiscing over bands that I listened to like 20 years ago. I think what's really exciting about the band is the kind of authenticity of the genre and the upfront, for lack of a better term, upfront cunt kind of approach to what they do. I mean, this is no airs or graces. Yes, there is the occasional clean section as an introduction to a track, but that's the genre. But even like when tracks like Dust Sang Fairest kicks in with this kind of clean epic thing, like if you've listened to the genre and you've seen the tracks 3 minutes long, you know you're not getting 3 minutes of that. You're basically counting down to the bit where it goes savage blasts, rapid riffs, and fucking scathing vocals. I love the vocals on this one. It's the production on them, and we'll come back to the overall production, but the production on the vocals have this kind of reverby hollowness about them. And because his range is at a higher register as well in terms of his screams, it's got that kind of real grit, piss and vinegar sound about it. I think it shines right through. In fact, like, even the production is so authentic to their sound that the guitars sound like of the era. The drums sounds like an old drum kit. Like, it's not like produced within an inch of its life with triggers everywhere. Yep. And like I say, the vocals have that kind of reverby hollow thing going on, which I fucking love. It is a no frills, like, to the point melodic death metal album, but that's not to say they're just trying to sound like other bands. They really aren't. Like, even the band know themselves that by track 6, when they hit that kind of almost glissando, like, picked harp thing going on there, that really is to give you respite, because every track up to that is just went direct for your throat. And then, rather than do the thing that you expect them to do, which is maybe lean back on the back half of the album, it's like, as the harp gets flung down, they can't just put like, play a fast one, and they just fucking go right back into it. And I kind of love that about it. Now, generally, I would say that when bands sound too much like something, or too much, like, if they're like, there's a level between paying homage and just parodying it. I like to think that the band, with all sincerity, are wearing their influences on their sleeves in the best possible way. I can pick snippets out from bands a while ago, but at no point was all of that, where this is a standard, like, at the gates, song. This is the standard Arch Enemy song. Like, I wasn't going through it doing that. I kind of love it because of that. I think it's surprisingly simple, but the playing on it is like of a really high caliber. You could argue that we've heard it all before, we've been there, we've done that, we've wore the t-shirt. And you're right. If the genre was huge at the moment, I might pick a little bit more at it and say it's not bringing anything fresh or revitalized kind of feelings, styles, or attitudes to it. But I think we're that far removed from it, and a lot of the mainstay big Templar acts in there are now quite far away from that sound, that actually it kind of feels like a little bit of a fresh air kind of burst to get this sort of sound.
Yeah.
I don't think... it feels like I'm damning it with faint praise. I don't think there's anything here you will have not heard like dozens of other bands do before.
Yeah.
But as a first album, out the gates... like if like someone said, check out this new melodic death metal band, that's exactly what it is. Like you're not. It doesn't move beyond that, and I think it does kind of, in a lot of ways. And like after listening to this, I'll be honest, I'd like started listening to older shit. I was like, you know, like I've not listened to these albums in years. I did the Dave thing. I was like, I've not listened to these albums in years. And that, I think that is testament to them. Like, yes, it reminds me of a lot of bands, but if they were doing it horribly, I don't think I would have done that. So yeah, like I can see why they're getting a bit of buzz about them. I think there's a lot of people that maybe, I think there's a lot of people younger than us, Dave, that maybe haven't been through the cycle of music that we have, and as a result, this will feel very fresh. And I also think at the same time, if you're someone that kind of pines for a sound that's maybe not as common as it was a while ago, I think they do it really, really, really well. So yeah, like, this ain't going to be setting the world on fire in any way, shape or form, but I think this is a really well put together, really well written, really well produced melodic death metal album. So I can't really. I'm thinking about it, like, the greatest fault I can give it is it reminds me of other bands, which isn't a bad thing. It reminds me of other bands without trying to sound like other bands. So there we go.
Okay.
What about you, Mr. Melodic Death Metal? Well, I listened to the genre before it was cool.
I don't know if these guys maybe had like a really like high bar to go over, because like there's so many like classic melodic death metal albums from back in the day.
That time frame, it's like there's like a 3-4 year window where it was just like wall to wall bangers. Like every band, like, I just to beat that album. Here you go.
Yeah. That kind of early to mid 90s, they just kept coming. Yeah, I can see why like these guys have got a bit of buzz. They've obviously grabbed the attention of a big label like Century Media for their debut, which is huge. And once again, they've brought in Taylor Young for production, who he also did their EP from 2021, I think it was. But these guys aren't noobs either. Like, these guys have been in other bands for a while. So it's possible, you know, there's been like links there from previous bands that's kind of got them, you know, a bit more kind of notoriety straight away. But I have to admit, I will say the very first thing, the cover art did put me off. Like, I did see that and think, is this some sort of medieval power metal album?
It's not. But then go back and look at the artwork for something like fucking, was it Jester Race and stuff like that? It's all kind of cheesy.
Yeah, well, some of it, yeah.
So I'm gonna hate on. If anything, I'm gonna hate on the font. The font's terrible. So like that is a fucking store bought font from an app.
Yeah,
so they could maybe get rid of that.
I just don't think it captures the band's sound. To be honest, but that's fine. The music does the talking at the end of the day. The 2021 EP was like 4 tracks, or 3 and an interlude, I think it was. Felt like a bit of like a taster kind of release. It kind of set the tone of what to expect stylistically from Upon Stone. It's a fairly hard and fast type of EP. There's a tiny like sprinkling of something lighter and more textured, just to show like that they're capable of it. But the debut album feels like a kind of fully expanded version of that, where they get to kind of show the full like kind of extent of what they can do and 30 minutes. And as you said, it goes hard, like right from the off. There's no intro track, there's no clean guitar to ease us in. It's just like bang and right into a ripping melodeath riff. I actually feel like these guys have also got a touch of the metalcore in there as well at times, like older metalcore. Especially that first track, it's got at the gates ripping it out, obviously, but there's a bit of Darkest Hour in there as well.
Should we get an at the gates jar where we have to put a pound in?
Yeah,
like
a klaxon or something. Yeah, there's a bit of that, but there's also a bit of kind of Darkest Hour in there as well. There's a bit of that kind of metalcore kind of galloping kind of sound to it. But these guys, they switch between that kind of like really fast pace, but they also throw in a kind of mid-pace groove. And over the top of that, you've got these really like savage vocals. That again, the vocals could sit in either genre as well. They could fit in melodeath, but they could also fit in the metalcore as well. He tends to go from like kind of guttural stuff to right into these really like that kind of blood curdling kind of scream, and it has the desired effect. It's a first track that'll make you kind of sit up and be instantly kind of engaged in it. As you said, there's not a huge amount of frill with it. There's a big kind of melodeath epic solo, and like a really short kind of clean guitar part that sets up the end of the track. But
there's a cover song as well, but
I'll get to that. And then the end of the track,
look at my notes, Duncan.
The end of the track finishes like really hard with hammer and double bass. And kind of dual kind of guitar leads, which again is very common in that style. I liked the energy of it. I liked that it was just like balls to the wall, and the production, as you said, is really cool. It's like very powerful, like a modern production, but steeped in old school at the same time, which is really cool. The band have been fairly open about their love for European melodic death metal bands, and
really?
That is all over it. It does. I agree. It feels very Scandinavian to me. Very like frostbitten, which that comes through even more on the second track, Onyx Through the Heart, which has got that kind of blackened kind of streak in there, and you've got like blast beats and a kind of blackened guitar, as well as the vocals, which do actually go up a bit in register at points as well. But I like that after that track, they kind of pulled on the reins a little bit on the Blackened side and gave us something again quite hefty and quite groove laden on by Destiny a Weapon, which weirdly I was listening to that track and I was like, you know, there's a wee tinge of like a Shadows Fall in there or something. I was like, it reminds me a little bit of the Art of Balance, some of the kind of tempo and the rhythm of it, and that's an album that came out like over 20 years ago.
Yeah,
little did I know, 2 tracks later, we would have some guest vocals from Brian from Shadows Fall on.
They're coming back with an album.
Yeah.
Apparently, they've written it or it's in the process of being recorded, and they seem all excited about it. So I'll be honest, they were a band that never really lived up to their full potential for me. That album is a fucking banger, and everything kind of around it was just like,
yeah. But it was cool. Like again, like we've not heard anything from them for a while, and he's got an incredible voice. Really, like he's got one of these voices just full of character, and it's like a really good contrast to Xavier's tone, which is really raw and really kind of gnarly sounding. So the 2 vocal parts work really well. Really cool guitar solo on the track, but the guitar work in general, right across the board, is excellent on the album. From the kind of the clean parts that they interweave through certain tracks to those big kind of hulking riffs that have got that like melodeath, metalcore, a little tinge of thrash in there as well. There's a nice crossover in there. I think my favourite moment of the album was actually the longest track, the Lantern, which clocks in at like just over 5 minutes. And I think the longer runtime lets them kind of go down, or lets them kind of go to town on the structure of the track a bit more, when they really fill it with plenty of changes from like, there's clean, really kind of haunting guitar parts, there's huge atmosphere, there's synths on there, but they still retain that like ferocity and blend the styles throughout. And I think that balance, where they mix the melodeath with a little bit of thrash, a little bit of metalcore, it's a really cool blend. And it's again something that's been done before by other bands, but it's not a mashup that you hear a lot of just now. My only kind of issues I had with the album is I do feel like it does get a little bit repetitive at times. Melodic death metal, modern melodic death metal can feel a bit like that on occasion. Like you're listening, you're like, have I heard that riff already? Like, is that something they've played like 2 tracks ago?
There is a reason that genre morphed over time, as I think bands found that themselves, and they started to experiment a little bit more with keys, so more keyboards, more like symphonic stuff, or more melody and the vocals, like that, to just differentiate it.
I mean, I feel like they do try and fit in a lot of ideas to make this record as exciting as possible. But I did feel like there was moments where I kind of lost where I was in the album. Like I wasn't sure if am I still on the same track or if I moved to another track. So I thought the clean moments were a good way of kind of making a track more distinguishable. I wouldn't be against them using a bit more of that in the future, to be honest. Or even, I know like it's a balls to the wall album, but I feel like they do kind of repeat the way these tracks kind of kick in as well. 99% of them are like, they just kind of kick in. And it's like all guns blazing basically from the start. And then obviously the end of the album, they add in a cover track of Misfits, Dig Up Her Bones, which was cool. I like the Misfits, but I don't think it was completely needed, if I'm honest. It's covered
Head scratcher. It is a head, like it's the last track, and you know my theory on last tracks. Like if you are going to do something like that, you do it on the last track. If it appears in the middle of the album, that's where I'm like, what are we fucking doing here? It's the last track. It's a bit of fun. Clearly influenced by the Misfits, or they enjoy the Misfits, and they do a good rendition of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all right. I mean, they've heavied it up a bit. I'm just not sure it really added anything to the album, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know. I think you'll only hear these guys get better over time, to be honest. I think as they kind of refine their sound and make it even more their own, I think they'll start to improve on releases after this. But even at this stage, I'm in. I enjoyed this. I'm 100% sure these guys will pick up a ton of fans from this release because it's got a lot of crossover. And if you do love that kind of European melodic death metal, then Upon Stone are likely your new favourite band. What do we think scores-wise for this one? What are you scoring this new Upon Stone album?
So I give this a 3.5. I think they're on something really good. Like I say, it pings the old nostalgia for me in a way which I quite liked. It did make me go on a little bit of a rummage through the iTunes libraries. Other libraries are available. Like to go back like about 25 years and start trolling through albums I haven't listened to in the longest time. I think there's a lot of promise here. They're very good at what they do. I also think that they've got a good thing going production wise, and I wouldn't like to hear this cleaned up too much. I think the rough and readiness of it actually really makes it sound a lot more blistering than it would if it was tightened up in any way. So I think they're a band to watch, I think. This is album number 1, great label to be on for their first album. And I dare say there's no doubt we will see this band within the next 2 years touring over here. That label is known for getting bands out and touring hard, so I look forward to seeing it live.
Nice. I'd agree. 3.5 seems right for this one. I think the hard thing for me is obviously when I hear an album like this, I instantly want to compare it to like my favourite melodic death metal albums, the Slaughter of the Soul and the Jester Race and Heartwork and stuff like that. And it's maybe a bit unfair, but I do think these guys have something that they could kind of evolve even more. Like there's elements in there that I think they're playing with that I think they could expand on even more. And make their sound even more kind of distinguishable. But I agree with you. I think the production's fantastic, and they've definitely got the right tools to make an absolutely killer album. So I'm looking forward to hearing what they do next. But yeah, for me just now on this one, it's a 3.5. Okay, so that is Upon Stone and Dead Mother Moon, out on January 19th on Century Media Records. Links below to the band and the pre-order. Check it out, have a listen, let us know what you think, stick some comments in. that is our review. Thank you for checking it out. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.